Hi, and welcome to Quilt Street. I'm Mary Kate Carpetras, and today we're going to be talking about how to make the variable star block. You may have heard other names for this block. These star blocks, there are so many variations on this particular look or this general look. One name you may have heard for it is Ohio Star, but we're calling it variable star. The block, as written in our library, finishes at 8 inches, which is a nice size. If you've never worked with that size, it's great for smaller projects, things along those lines. So let's get into it. It's a pretty simple block. It's made up of one center unit, which is a diamond in the square unit, and 4 flying geese. And that's pretty much it. So let's talk about this center unit, this diamond in the square unit. We are having you make this with triangles and squares, no stitch and flip for this. It works really well. You're going to take 2 squares at the size given in the pattern, and you're going to cut them in half to create half square triangles. You're going to join 2 half square triangles to opposite sides of your center square, as you can see here. And you're going to press the seam allowances as shown in the pattern. The pressing does make a difference here in how the block lines up when you're joining your rows and joining your units. So you do want to follow the pressing arrows as given. As you'll see, you're pressing pressing your seams toward that center square. It may seem counterintuitive, right? But trust us on this. Then you're going to go and you're going to add the other 2 half square triangles to the remaining sides of this center square. Again, pressing, you're going to press those seams toward that center square, and you're going to end up with your center unit. That's all there is to it. I'm going to keep you out because I'm going to need you in a few minutes. Next, you're going to make the flying geese. Now, in this pattern, we do have you make flying geese with the stitch and flip method, where you are using squares and rectangles instead of half square triangles and quarter square triangles. You're going to draw a diagonal line from corner to corner on the back of the smaller square, and you're going to line it up as shown on one end of the rectangle, stitch on that line, or maybe just a thread to the outside, because that'll give you some room when you go to open up that triangle. It's going to cover that edge of the rectangle. And then you're going to trim that 1/4 inch seam allowance, and you're going to repeat that on the other side of the rectangle. And then you get your flying geese, and you're going to make 4 of these. I'm going to save you 2 because I'm going to need you. That's it as far as units go for this block. The rest of it is just all about laying it out. So let's do that. Our center unit goes here, right in the center. And then we're going to flank it with the flying geese, kind of angled, pointing outwards toward the outer edges of the block on all 4 sides. And then we're going to finish it off with our background fabric squares in each corner. And it really is nice to use the same fabric for the center of the center unit, as well as the larger triangles and the flying geese and these corners, because then that star really pops, right? It really lifts out of that background. So that's another thing to keep in mind. You can always play around with this center square if you wanted to fussy cut something and, get it in there. That would be a lot of fun, but I love this layout too. So now you're going to join your patches and your units into rows as we normally do. Again, it's a modified 9 patch, if you will. You're going to join rows horizontally, and then you're going to join those rows together. Now, when you're joining your flying geese to the center unit, you want to pay attention to how these little points line up. And one trick is to use a pin, to insert a pin right into that seam, right into the corner, or where the X is formed by the intersecting seam lines, and do the same thing and stick that pin through the other side. It might be a little bit harder to see because of the way that the seams are pressed. Take your time with it, get it lined up, and then use that pin to make sure that those patches, those units, don't budge from one another, and pin it. And then you're going to get points that line up beautifully, and it will help the rest of your block come together. Again, this is an 8-inch block, and the thing is about this size is there's really not a lot of not a lot of places to hide if something is off with your piecing, if your seam allowance is off a little bit. So these little tips for accuracy and getting everything to fit together will help when you're working at a smaller size like this, believe it or not. The bigger the quilt block, the little easier it is to kind of make things fit, stretch a little bit there or here or there. So that is how you make this nice petite 8-inch block. Let's take another look at it, shall we? Again, look at how beautifully these points lined up. I just wanted to point out that if you rotate it 45 degrees, it gives a whole other look. If you were to put this on point in a quilt, have these blocks on point, you have a whole different look. So it's like 2 looks for the price of 1 block, right? Thank you so much for joining us. Make sure to check out the other blocks in our block library at quiltstreet.com.